Hi, welcome to class number 1, part 3 for mobile interactive app programming for the 2015 International Summer University Aerospatiale in Germany. This is Professor Quevedo again. Now, in this part, we will discuss the other option that we have to try to develop apps that can be distributed to all possible users, and that's the closed platform mobile development tools. That's what we were discussing in this part. Um, so there is a question, and the last question I think in the quiz that you need to do for activity number 2 that is asking you about XMTs, which is the tools that we will gonna use to develop apps that can be distributed in multiple devices. And something important here is uh, to make an emphasis. Ideally, would be that you just develop an app one, and it would be great that we can do something similar to Save As iPhone, Save As um, Android, Save As so on, right? Or to Sport. So in these cases, we don't have that capability yet, but I mean, we still would do something that I mean can be used for most of them, and then the key is with very little code change or very little customization, then we can adapt an app that we develop so it can be now deployed in Android and then in iOS. So these are some of the most popular XMT vendors, and I think one of the most people uses nowadays is the Titanium, the App Accelerator. Those are the one that most people um, make reference over and over, but there are other. We need to be aware that there are other XMT vendors available. And let's go into this one. I mean, this table makes a comparison in which most of them you see they are using an HTML and JavaScript approach, and uh, and then, like for example, in the case of Cordova, then you further extend it into Java and into Xcode for iOS, and uh, and others use other type of languages. But again, the the idea is that you just develop in one system using the languages or the environment that they have, and then from that we just make the transition, and at least it's saving that you don't have to start from zero to develop in a different platform, because the other approach is okay, you develop an app for Android, you do the code in Java, and then you start all from zero doing um, uh, the Objective C and then for the iOS, for example. So in this case, we try to say something and reuse as much as possible of what we did, so we can simplify things. Now, now, again, we will have advantages and disadvantages using either way. So, like we were discussing in the second part of this class, um, in that video lecture, we were saying again advantages and disadvantages of using native apps versus, for example, in that case, the web apps. Well, something similar happens here, right? Um, has a lot of advantages to go with native apps because you are developing that for the specific device, so you have full control of the hardware, like the camera and the GPS, and you have a way of optimize the code that you have, and then obviously the performance will be faster. Now will be the disadvantage that okay, has an increased cost that you need to be developing for each one of those, and then all the complications that we said in the previous video lecture. And and for the case of using an XMT uh, native app, the problems is that okay, when you're getting into the other, I mean, the code may not be optimized because of the translation. I mean, maybe they didn't get into the most efficient piece of code, and then this can also lead into maybe slower compilation and there may be things that are not available from the other. I mean, when we were doing the developing from one side to the other, because like for example, not everything may be available from that uh, um, part that you're doing. And again, these are things that we need to consider when we're developing. Okay, yeah, we got the advantages and disadvantages on it. Now, the last part of this video lecture is just a demo of using Cordova. It just has just to get a taste of something similar that we will be doing here. We were not using Cordova, but that's what I got this here. So we got an idea of uh, using this. In this case, we'll build the location aware system using the system Cordova for Android. So we will go over, as indicated here, the architecture, the setup, the development, and the deployment. Um, I don't expect that you will fully understand what is going to be described here, because there will be codes that will be specific to the system, but you will get an idea of the process of doing this. Something that we understand is the architecture. I mean, we're using some type of a web app, and we're developing using HTML and JavaScript, and then from that we um, get into some type of HTML rendering engine, the web view, and then from here you can see that we go into the device, but then what they call the phone gap plugs in. I mean, there are things that maybe we need to um, fix, or that we need to have some extra additional code, and then from there we also get into the mobile app. So this kind of gives you an overview of how the architecture of using Cordova will work, what will be the process that we will be following when using that. So in the Cordova application, we got the UI, the user interface, in which we're using the HTML, the JavaScript, and, uh, and we're developing, and then there is the bridge between the JavaScript and the native code. That is the one that is communicating from the HTML application that we got in the native platform. Now, the bridge between the native code and the Java application, letting communication from the size back and forth, and that's what we were trying to say over here. So we got an interface, and then we got the platform. Now, in here is just um, this demo this is describing now the steps of what are we doing next, and then don't be confused when it says they set up Eclipse. Maybe we haven't even talked about Eclipse, which will be the environment that is used to develop Android. And in this class, actually, we will be using uh, uh, Android Studio instead of Eclipse. But for this example that here, I mean, the development is okay. You do the setup of Eclipse and Android tools as we're supposed to do. I mean, that means it says it's have it ready, and then download the latest copy of Cordova. Yes. So then you create a new Android project, and then you just follow the steps there. And we would actually go into some of the details about creating an Android project using Android Studio in, uh, in the next lecture. But here is just to give you an idea. Okay, you have Eclipse ready, you got all the tools that you need there. You download Cordova, you create the project as indicated here. Then you're asking in this case to create a new blank activity screen. And then basically you have now the system ready. And then now from the Cordova development, I mean, you go and adding the steps that, I mean, you just um, copy the files that are indicated here into Eclipse. So you see here there are some here that are indicated here with the errors, what will be the changes. Those of you that maybe have experience with developing for Android may kind of understand what this looks like, but I mean, you don't need to worry. Again, this is just to give you an idea of how will be the process, like, okay, adding that there. And then there is a simple um, uh, HTML document in which we're doing the developing, basically using the JavaScript and some logic about the app that we want to do. And then, so here we have all the code that we needed. And then the next part in the development is that you need to do some modification. You see that the thing is that you were developing in another language, which in this case in the HTML interface and the JavaScript, and then here you do some modifications now in the Android project to do the integration. Then something else that will be needed is to copy some of the permissions that if we're gonna be using the internet, you're gonna be using that we have to do that in the what we the what is called the manifest file in the Android project. So you see here there is an interaction in which you go back and forth from the HTML interface and the JavaScript and the other document. And then finally we're ready to deploy, which is, we're ready to have the application tested. And then we're ready to see it in the emulator on an actual device. And this is just an idea, man. You see, it wasn't that complicated, the whole process. I mean, you have those systems, those two system opens, and but you're basically developing in just uh, the main code was developing in using the core command. Then you still need to understand some details in the Android to make those modifications in that implementation. So again, this is just an idea of how this process looks like. And again, in the next tutorial, in the next class, we will talk about more into Android development, because the way that we're gonna do is we're gonna have to have we're gonna be testing our applications in Android, and we're gonna be using a JavaScript-based method to do that. So similar to what shown in this demo. Okay, so see you in the next class, and your activities that you have now is to complete the quiz. I think you got five questions in your quiz, and then you have a class presentation. And those presentations will conclude with class number one.